welcome to Too Fast, Too Forever. There's all kinds of family. We chose this one. This is episode 327, The Fate of the Furious, Lap 13. I'm Joey Lewandowski.
I'm Joe, too. And this episode is brought to you by Books, BOOX.com. Exceeded by power and productivity, the only Android e-paper device with ultimate flexibility to power your work and study. Get productive with Books.
Well, shout out to Books and welcome to Too Fast, Too Forever. With us today, we have a full house, Joe. We've got 3 guests today. We have today the co-editors of Full-Throttle Franchise, an academic book about Fast and Furious published with Bloomsbury Press. With us today, we have Joshua Gulam, Fraser Elliott, and Sarah Feinstein. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi there.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes,
and
thank you
for
guys.
Basically taking similar ideas to what we said on the show and immortalizing it in the written word forever for hopefully
Academic texts.
I would love to be like in school and be like, this is what I'm going to write my thesis on. I'm going to read this book. Before we talk about anything, who was this one of your idea? Was this pitched to you? Like, where did this come from? How did this start? Because this is like, I know that sometimes like I wrote like a very highfalutin thing about like Lost and postmodernism and what Jack is like and what Locke is like, and it's just like, all right, I just want to talk about Lost, right? But like, where does this come from? Like, why does this book exist?
I think it was because we loved the films, didn't we? And we were having discussions. So we were all doing our PhDs at the same time at the same university in Manchester. And I think we had a shared love of action films, and these ones just, I don't know, were occupying a lot of our time, weren't they? And I think I mentioned it to both of you probably separately, and then we realised that we all shared an interest in it.
Love it.
And then, yeah, just from there, just thinking, why not put together some sort of a book about it rather than just talking about it endlessly, even though that's great as well. So, yeah.
I think we also share maybe your guys' approach to this in that we all sincerely love those films.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's something we talked a lot about is the kind of sincerity of the emotion that it produces in us. And I think that was also a big part of wanting to reflect that in a collection of essays too.
I have so two things. Number one, we'll talk about the book. We'll also talk about, we have lots to talk about today, but I think it's important that like in a handful of these essays, the fact is brought up that it seems like basically only this one woman, Mary Beltran, had ever like written about these movies seriously. And like she's quoted in like half these essays. Like here's what she wrote like in 2005 and 13, like forever ago, right? Like before the franchise was like a friend, right? So I like that there is now more official writing on that. But my most important question to all 3 of you, do you like these movies more or less now that you've spent probably an unconscionable amount of time thinking about them, writing about them, editing them, compiling them? Because you run the risk either way.
That's a great question. There's sometimes like, always watch these films, always come back to them. And there's times when I find myself now thinking, am I just doing work in my spare time here now that it's become something I do for my job as well? So I'm begrudgingly not wanting to give more work over to my employers necessarily. I sometimes turn away from it, but no, I still enjoy the films as much as I always have, and like getting to meet people like yourselves, but also the other contributors was so great. Like hearing all these different ways of thinking about the films was brilliant. So I don't know if that's the same for the other guys.
Totally. And I mean, I would also maybe throw it back at you two, because you're on your like 13th or 14th rewatch of the film. So you have watched them more than us, but it just reminded me, Sarah and I rewatched Fate of the Furious together before today. And I think we both had this about 10 minutes and we were like, hey, these movies are pretty good. We'd kind of like forgotten, because, like just being in the kind of the depths of the academic side and writing about it. And then you sit down and put them on in 20 minutes and you're like, oh yeah, this is why we're doing this.
Why we did it.
These movies rule.
Exactly. No, I have this experience a lot. Like Joey and I think both will like watch these movies. And I mean, we've watched them minute by minute for the first 2 and, 13 times through talking about them with different guests, and like every time, like, yeah, sometimes I still throw it on and I'm like just pleasantly surprised by how much fun a movie can be, right? Like that's the charm of it for me.
And we were saying today, like, weirdly, so we've changed the release. Like, we started out monthly, then it was every 2 weeks, and it was every week, and like we figured out different ways to release it or whatever. But now we're every 3 weeks we do one of these movies. We do other stuff in between, right? But because Halloween just happened, we had a bonus, sort of like we did Paul Walker's first movie, Monster in the Closet, and giving an extra week between Fast and Furious, I'm like, it feels like forever
since
we've watched one of these movies. And it was only one extra week. So instead of 3 weeks between, it was 4. But I'm just like, man, I miss the family. But Sarah, what about you? Do you like these movies more or less, or do you still love them, or did the book rob you of your joy?
No, I definitely love it more. I think that, listening to your guys' podcast, in the same way of reading the fantastic group of authors that we got to work with, everyone notices something or sees something from an angle that I hadn't thought of. So I think it definitely made me love it more. And it's also just, I think, the nature of who I was in 2001 when I saw this in the cinema, right, is not who I am in 2023. So there's also that memory of who I was and what I was interested in when I watched it the first, time. So I definitely think that I've grown to like it a lot more.
Beautiful. And I also do want to, my other like high level note is that I am so like for as popular and as successful and as beloved as this entire franchise is, as you would refer to as the transmedia franchise, a word that I not learned, but read in the book.
Oh, I learned some new words too.
I cannot believe how many people don't know that Spy Racers exists or that Los Bandoleros exists. And the fact that there's an essay on each of those, I'm like, there's people out there who like know, because like I've said it before, I'll say it again, Los Bandoleros Letty is maybe my favorite Letty. I don't like Spy Racers, but we've spent so much time watching and talking about Spy Racers. Oh my God,
we watched so much Spy Racers.
This is the only other thing I've ever seen anywhere that's like, let's dig into this a little bit. We're like, why? You know what I mean? The fact that you care enough to like do it, like, edit an essay about it.
It's donut, man. It's donut.
Donut.
The whole time it is donut.
Yoga. What, right? Wait. Is it Yoga? Yeah, it is Yoga. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
The energy drink. Okay. So I want to talk about the book more later, but at first I want to get a little bit of credentials from the three of you. So we'll start with Josh. Mm-hmm. Josh, what was the first? Did you see the first? Because, I mean, Sarah already has more street cred than I do, that she saw the first one in theaters. Like, I don't have that. But Josh, what was the first movie you saw? Which was the first one you saw in theaters, if it wasn't the first one? And then please hit us with your rankings. Just, a history of your franchise, how you see this, and your rankings, please.
Right. This is where it gets serious, doesn't it? So, I think the first one I watched was on DVD. It was Too Fast, Too Furious with my brother. And he's a bit older than me, so he'd been to see it in the cinema. And he was obsessed. The funny thing is, I'm not really into driving or anything like that, but my brother really is. He loves driving. He works a job where he has to do a lot of high-speed driving. It's a legal job. He's a police officer. So, but he was obsessed with these, and then I found we bonded over them. So I think that was the first one I watched, and then I just really got into them. We watched them regularly.
Sweet.
Yeah, and then not looked back since, really, I suppose. In terms of my rankings now, I've been going back and forth on this.
It's so hard. It's so hard.
Yeah, because do your rankings change a lot?
Yes, not a lot, but they do change. Like, Joe has refused, so Joe won't give me official rankings except for every 5 laps.
I think you need 5 watch-throughs to get an appropriate re-ranking, and I also like the time that it takes for me to forget my previous ranking, so I'm not influenced as we go per lap. And
as the franchise has gotten bigger and we've sort of spaced out the episodes, like a lap used to be like 4 months long, and now a lap's like 9 months long. So like Joe is really 4 years between real rankings now. So it's truly insane. But we do, every once in a while, like I think like when a new movie comes out, we've seen it a couple times. I'll sort of kind of re-rank a little bit.
Yeah.
But like they're mostly kind of locked, but a couple slide up and down a little bit. The big question to you can either go top down or bottom up. The other question is, are you ranking Hobbs and Shaw? Because I think as scholars, you're probably inclined to include it, but recent guests we've had are like, not a Fast and Furious movie.
Yeah, I fully understand that, but I have ranked it, and I'll go from top to bottom, and you can see.
Okay.
So I went number 5 was my first.
Also, I want to say, you guys are based in the UK. Your simplification in the movie titles is honestly disrespectful, I think. Like the Fast and the Furious 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like I understand it, don't like it.
One of our English friends sent us like this, what was it, like a zine or something, right? At one point we were reading, we were like, what the hell are they talking about?
They're like,
that they
in
don't
the Fast
have...
and Furious 5, we're like, what is that movie?
Yeah.
Wow,
You gotta lean into the insanity. But you can refer to them however you want to refer to them. I just want you to know, on record, I don't like it.
Okay, that's fine. So Fast 5 was number 1 for me. Then
Okay.
almost a dead heat, but then I'm going The Fast and the Furious number 2.
Okay.
And
2 is
then
very high. Okay.
That's a time capsule film for me.
Yeah, you said you watched it with your brother, the nostalgia.
No. He's saying the OG is number 2.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Sorry.
So,
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
No, I understood.
You said number 2. I thought
Joe's brain is broken.
Yes,
Don't
yeah,
listen.
and I thought you were remaining too fast. It's okay.
Then I'm going Tokyo Drift. Absolutely love it. It's on TV. It seems every week here in the UK. It's on one of our channels. Then I'm going Furious 7, Fast and Furious 6,
Okay.
Too Fast, Too Furious, Fate of the Furious,
Okay.
Fast 4, as we've called it in the book, or Fast and Furious, then F9, then F10, and then right at the bottom, Hobbs and Shaw, which
Okay.
is more
Okay.
of a personal grievance with that and the beef that it caused, I think. So, yeah.
Well, that's another thing that, Joe and I were talking about, that because it's a book and because it takes probably years to like get through editing and publishing and everything, like it's sort of frozen in amber right around the release of F9. So I guess you don't really have that distaste for Fast 10. Like there's the whole it seems like you're not really crazy about where the franchise has gone. And so it kind of, in a way, is better for you that it captures like the stuff that you like more, which I guess, works.
There's an
out
innocence.
to your benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So, Sarah, you said you saw the first one in theaters. Have you seen all of them in theaters? What's your history with these? And please hit us with your rankings.
No, I think actually there are a number of them that I didn't see in the theater. Like, I don't think I saw 4 in the theater. And I don't know that I saw 6.
Okay.
But the rest I definitely did. And I think actually the thing that drew me to it, well, the first thing that should have drawn me to it is I'm from Detroit, right? So
Okay.
Cars, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was actually Pitch Black. So I had seen Vin Diesel in that. And then I had loved that movie so much. I thought, oh, this looks like Point Break. I'll go see it because he's in it.
Of course.
I think actually for me, my number 1 would be 7, but I think that has a lot to do with the emotional kind of significance and intensity of it. And then I kind of have a tie of Tokyo Drift and 5. So I think that 5 is probably out of all of the films, like probably technically, narratively, the best. But as we said, there's something about the Tokyo Drift. Probably, I think it has sort of the most interesting precision driving, and I think that just from like the choreography of races and stunts, that one kind of stands out.
There is one essay in this book that describes, in terms of like the choreography, like that describes drifting in a way that's like more detailed and more defined than the movie does. And I'm just like, oh, that's what it is. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like hard breaking into the turns. I'm just like, oh, okay. Thank you.
And then I'd go with the original. And then actually it's 8, because I think that there's fantastic set pieces. And I probably, like, I have to say the zombie cars and the scene with the giant bank vault are probably 2 of the greatest moments of action cinema for me. And then I really like 10.
We like 10. We like Jason Momoa. We really like 10.
I thought it was, and then I liked Hobbs and Shaw.
I thought it was fun. We always pitch it. I pitch it as one of the most fun Fast and the. It's just fun.
We're on video, and Sarah looked like chagrined as she said that. Like, I'm gonna get in trouble for saying this, but I like that movie.
Nope.
Well, I'm gonna get in trouble with, I think, Josh, with the film I like least. So then I guess it goes was 4, 6, 9, and the one I liked least was Too Fast, Too Furious.
Mm-hmm.
The second one, Too Fast, sits very, very low in the rankings for a lot of people.
I will say that, we've not had that many rankings. We've had about a dozen rankings since 10 came out. So since there's been a possibility of having a movie be in 11th place, then you are the first person to rank Too Fast 11th. So you broke new ground on the podcast.
Nice.
So congratulations.
I don't know if that's an award I want to.
I don't know either, but that, like Joe's saying, that's definitely one of the consensus least. How do you rank 11 perfect films, right?
Exactly.
But, And Fraser, what about you? What was the first one you saw? Did you see them in theaters? Where did you see it? And then please your rankings as well.
Yeah, I feel like we're learning a lot about each other, despite going through this
definitely.
editorial process. Josh, some of these rankings, Josh, we need to take outside with a couple of wrenches. And yeah, so I'm a bit of a latecomer, a late bloomer with Fast and Furious. I think I saw Tokyo Drift on DVD at some point around the early or the mid 2000s, pre 2010, but I can't say that for sure, but I have a memory of joking about it and mocking it unnecessarily.
It's where a lot of people start. It's okay.
Yeah, a lot of regret as I've matured into adulthood.
Can you imagine you watching that movie knowing in like 15 years you'd be editing a book about the franchise?
I think about this all the time. I'm always, watching those DVD menus of all the different colored cars driving around and thinking, in one day. But the film that got me really into it was 6. I remember seeing a trailer for that and just going like, this franchise doesn't seem to be what I thought it was, and then going to see it and just thinking it was the best thing I'd ever seen. And especially as it just goes to the plane sequence at the end, it was just sort of like, okay, I need to revisit this franchise. And then actually Sarah and I watched them all. We had like a 2-week kind of session where we just bought loads of snacks and watched the whole thing, and found ourselves. I remember the moment, I think for me, was when at the end of 7, when we looked at each other and we were both crying. And
oh yes, of course.
Like, we're actually crying, aren't we? That was kind of the moment. So that's my history with the franchise, and I think my rankings quite similar in some ways to everyone else. I'm going to start at the bottom. My bottom is Fast and Furious, so the 4th one.
Okay.
I think it's like when they were starting to figure out where it was going, but it's pretty boring and it's just 90% tunnels, which is, well, in my memory anyway, a lot of CGI.
When was the last time you watched 4? Because this is one that the more we watch it, the more we enjoy it.
Oh, okay. It's been about maybe a year or 2 years since I've watched 4. So
just let it sneak in, when it's playing on television. When you see it, just give it another shot, and you might, like, especially now you did the book, everything like that, with some new eyes, it really might help. Because when we did our very first rankings, I think we did rankings before we even started, like, we were, like, in the very first lap, before we started. And I had 4 dead last in mine, and that's one that's drifted way up for me.
Oh, where is it?
4's the one for Joe, and then for me, it's the one that we're talking about tonight. Where 8, I'm just like, I don't like this. I don't think it works. And like every time I watch it, like it's a little bit.
Yes.
Like, it's still like middle for me, but it's like I like more about it than like that's definitely shifted the most of all of them.
Same, yeah. I think that me too. One that hasn't really shifted since I saw it is F9, which I've put next.
Okay.
Despite it being filmed like 20 meters from my house in Edinburgh, it doesn't make the cut. Then I've put Hobbs and Shaw and Spy Racers. Is that allowed?
Yeah.
You absolutely can.
Because I was just thinking sort of semi-spit comedic spin-offs that are fine enough in different ways. So I've put those there. Then I've got Too Fast, Too Furious.
Okay.
Then I've got Fate of the Furious for the same reasons. The first time I saw it, I was pretty not into it. I thought the comedy was kind of out of step for the series, but it's grown on me every time I've watched it. Then Fast X, because I actually really liked Fast X. I thought it was
I really like it.
But as we're saying, all perfect movies. So not that you weren't saying that you liked it, Josh. Then I've got 6, great movie. Then Tokyo Drift. So it's gone up in my estimations, as we talk about in the book, key moment in the franchise. Then The Fast and the Furious, the first film. So that's number 3, third from the top. And then I think Fast 5 next. I think, as everyone says, sort of technically, objectively, whatever, the best. But I've got 7 in the top place as well, just for the emotional gut punch of the last sort of 20 minutes, and flying cars and everything else going on in that movie.
Gotta love it. Yeah, so I should not have been surprised. Like, it's amazing to me, like, as I'm listening, I'm typing in the numbers into our spreadsheet, and it's amazing to me how many people like forget a movie or like misnumber a thing. But I shouldn't have doubted, like, all three of you as literate scholars would not mess up the rankings. But it's also, it's surprising. Sarah and Fraser, you guys have very similar rankings. Josh, a little bit of a wild card. He's a little bit out there, but not that he's wrong, not that they're right. Whatever.
Nobody's right. Nobody's wrong.
I can definitely see why you two maybe watch the movies together and Josh, doesn't.
I think maybe I overthought it, because I had a ranking a few years ago, and then I feel like doing it for this, I've moved things up and down. Maybe I overthought it, and I
can't even settle. I have to eventually just put my just have to close the paper and be like, that's what I'm going with, because I'll tinker too much. It's terrible.
Yeah. And originally I did have Los Bandoleros in there. Around about halfway, because I think, like you said, it's the best version of Letty. It's the best version of Letty and Dom. And when we left because we all went to go and see Fast X at the same time, didn't we? And we went with a bunch of people who weren't necessarily the biggest fans of the films, and they were saying Vin Diesel didn't have any chemistry with Letty or with anyone, in fact. So it's a bit of slander, and I just felt like Los Bandoleros is just the chemistry is there.
Seriously. I will say, though, as much as I want to defend, and I think Joe is with me in this, as much as I want to defend everything about this, the turbocharged prelude, which I noticed was not mentioned, I don't think, in this entire book.
No, I think there was like a mention that it's the transition between. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yes. Not great. Not great. But
but it's a 3-minute music video that we talked about it before. Yeah.
We do have some other questions I'm going to skip today to make sure we get to the conversation itself. But I'm curious, do each of you have, it doesn't have to be in this movie, a favorite character in the franchise? Could be in one movie or every movie. Is there a favorite character that you each have for the franchise?
I'll go first, I guess, because when you put the choice of films to us, I was obsessed with Cipher for some reason. Not necessarily because I think she's the best character. I find her the most continually fascinating character. I've watched this film so many times, and I think she really sticks out to me as just an out there character. I love all the monologuing. I guess we'll get into that.
That's so strange that you like Cipher so much, and then like the 9 and 10 where she's like becoming or stays as prominent as she is so much lower for you. It feels weird.
A question we don't ask anymore, but I do want, because you mentioned her, and I don't think anybody's ever said their favorite character is Cipher. I mean, I've done a whole podcast about Charlize Theron, so I've seen everything she's done. So, I have strong thoughts. I love almost all of her movies. The ones that she's not, overly sexualized and the woman in Hollywood thing. But do you have a preference between Fate and F9 Cipher hair? Do you like what we call the dreads or the Karen cut? Because the Fast 10, they're like, let's actually style her and make her look beautiful and badass and cool and finally gets her due. But two objectively terrible haircuts in these movies. Do you have a preference between those two haircuts?
I think you're between a rock and a hard place here, but I'm going to go for Fast 8.
Okay.
That was the one where I was just like, they're going with that hair. And from there, no amount of hair or different types of hair would surprise me, I think.
Yeah. Sarah, do you have a favorite character in the franchise?
I do. I also recently saw Gone in 60 Seconds, and what I noticed, right, was the hairdos, right, of Angelina Jolie, who I think you've written about also, Josh. I was shocked because I kind of forgot that she had the dress, and I was like,
pretty much exactly the same. Yeah,
exactly. I think my favorite character would probably be Letty. And I think that she's interesting from a number of perspectives. One, if you look at kind of what roles women were cast in action films at the time of, the first film, she's remarkably different, right?
For sure.
Kind of sidekick and representation of a woman. And I think that probably I think maybe one of the things with the film is that there's a bit of a crossover, right, between who these characters are and who the actors who portray them is. So part of it is, I think Michelle Rodriguez is such an interesting actor, And I think her role in kind of advocating for maybe challenging even some of the, we could say, more interesting representations of women in action films. I kind of attribute that luddiness, kind of crossover there. So I say it's definitely her. One of the things I always wonder about is whatever happened to Leon, but I wouldn't say he's one of my favorite characters, but he's certainly the one I'm the most curious about what happened to.
We love Leon. We want Suki back really bad. I mean,
I
she's
always
got the
say
best money.
Leon's in jail though, just somewhere, just in jail for some like shoplifting or something.
Low-level crimes.
Yeah.
Surely you got to break him out at this point, now, haven't you? You got to break him out of prison. Maybe they've done it before.
Maybe he's more of harm to himself outside than he is inside, and it's safer for him to be inside.
Fraser, favorite character in the franchise?
It's too hard. It's too hard. I have to give an honorary shout out for Rafaela in Spy Races. We were big fans with the three of us.
She's
watched that,
great.
and she was fantastic. So all the listeners out there that have been avoiding Spy Races, do maybe watch like a Rafaela supercut, if possible.
Do you think that exists? Hold on, let me see that. That might not exist. That's like,
Well, we'll get on it after this episode. I'm very cautious saying this, but I'm a big Hobbs guy.
Okay.
At least in the kind of the first few Hobbs appearances, I think just that some of the lines, the line delivery, the kind of the big man energy brought to the franchise, that kind of the WWE energy that changed so much the franchise. I think, I'm a bit of a Hobbs guy in the context of those two films in sort of 5 and 6. And Daddy's Got to Go to Work at the end of 7,
of course,
flexing off the cast. Love it. Yeah.
Very, very cool. So let's dive into, and I'll talk more about a little bit about the book later, but let's talk about Fate of the Furious now. Favorite moments, least favorite moments. I know that, I don't know if you collectively decided on this one. I don't remember how many had been like sort of assigned or allotted by the time I, found your book, but what about this movie? We have your rankings, but what about this movie do you love? Why did you choose this one? Is it just a more interesting one to talk about? Any of you want to jump in first? Because we've talked about it a bunch. I still have new thoughts about it too, but curious what led you, the three of you, to sort of collectively decide to talk about this one.
I think I may have inflicted it on Sarah and Fraser. This is one that I really, really enjoyed. And then weirdly, I think as you've watched it more, it's probably gone up in your estimation. As I've watched it more, maybe because I had it so high, it's gone a bit further down. So, but for me, the opening sequence of this, the pre-title sequence, is so ludicrously fast and furious. It's just brilliant. It's a return to, the street racing, the idea of destroying the car in order to save the car it's just brilliant. I think that's one of my favorite sequences in the whole franchise.
When we were rewatching it this time, that whole sequence revolves around Dom's cousin,
yes,
who is mentioned at any other point in the franchise.
He comes back.
He comes back in this movie, but also like in this movie, they're like, Hobbs is like, "Where's my daughter?" And Mr. Nobi goes, "With your sister." We're like, "Hold on, wait, where's this? Who's the sister?" It's just like there's family. There's always family. There's always more family.
There's always family for the spin-offs down the line.
Yeah.
The opening sequences, because we teach as well at university, so I tend to show that as an example of looking at narrative and character in action films. And a lot of the times my students are just like, I don't get it. And then I feel like I'm trying to convert them into how incredible this is. And I think
we all are, Josh. Don't worry.
This scene is almost like, it feels like the Dom mythology just completely unrestricted, completely let loose, and that whole thing about Cuban spirit, it's brilliant. I love it. So
I remember when the movie came out, and I remember checking, like I try to like avoid reviews and spoilers and everything like that, but I remember, and this is before the podcast started, but I remember being like, oh, it has like a 40 on Rotten, like people did not like it. And I remember watching the opening scene and I'm just like, they're crazy. This movie rules. And then like, the plot unfolds. I'm like, oh, I get it now. But like the first, I'm like, when's it get bad? Because this is so good.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, are they just tired of these? Because I didn't read the reviews, I just like saw the number and like, oh, I get it now. But you're sitting here like, oh no, this is so good.
When we were watching it, we were really struck by that, because there are a lot of things, Josh, that you've actually mentioned in conversations we've had, both while we were doing the book and after, sort of about the kind of it'd be really interesting to hear your opinion about this, about kind of the American idea of kind of, the what's the kind of noble working man, right? And I think that there's, as you've talked about in your podcast and we talk about in the book, there is this change from being street racers to international anti-terrorism heist makers. And I think that opening sequence kind of goes back to that kind of, embodied knowledge, right? And he's, fixing the engine with the tab from a soda can, and that kind of ingenuity and a kind of physical intelligence, right? That I think does a good job. And maybe Fraser and I were talking about this, is the way it sort of sets up things in a kind of narrative way in the film is quite. I forgot how smart that was, and I think that kind of sort of sets the scene with that. And then it's just that scene of his car being on fire and driving in reverse, along. It's just, yeah. But I think it definitely, for me, the scene that blew me away was actually that zombie car thing. And we were talking about kind of that, there's an overriding theme, right, of this kind of fear and maybe of technology, that once they kind of go away from the kind of street racing, that's kind of an undercurrent. But that kind of seems to have tapped into something that everyone was afraid of with the, driverless cars. And it's such a clever device that you can't kind of believe no one's thought of it before.
And it's like their anti-hero. Their anti-hero is a self-driving car. So, like, yeah, what could be worse to Dom Toretto? And it's a car that he can't drive.
Excellent point.
We've had a couple different ways of breaking down the franchise into like different eras, whether there's the cars and the action movies or like the different like directors or whatever, right? But this definitely seems to signify like God's eye into this is like we're in the tech era now. And so it seems like you're okay with that. Like you're not one, because like I know that there's a lot of people just like, I don't want this. I want more cars than just computers and stuff like that. But it seems like that's an interesting path for that you want to see them explore further.
And I also think that what Sarah was saying about the honorable working man plays into this too. I don't know how much the general fan base would respect like the Dom Toretto character if he came in as a spy. But the fact that we like he's so relatable that he starts as a mechanic and can be an everyman, I think is part of the reason why people stick around so long. And the gradual transition plays really well for them in this franchise, that like they can make him a superhero now. That's totally fine, because we are like, oh, he's the car mechanic. And like if he just came in as a superhero, like if they tried to reboot this, if they tried to boot the franchise from 8, I don't think this would hit as well as like an alternative to a 007 movie, right? Like the idea that we grow with them, as you say, like, you're 20 years different from when we started this, and you are 20 years different, like as the audience, is like makes that very, very approachable and acceptable to the fan base.
I was thinking when watching the zombie car sequence, and the moment where Dom comes out and he's been turned by Cipher, and he comes out with this sort of black hockey mask and all the body armor. He's the complete antithesis, isn't he, of everything that he's been before. He's no longer just in his work shirt or his work vest. Now he's become robot, hasn't he? And that signifies that change. So yeah, I think that move towards tech and looking at how they deal with that against the backdrop of them being, people who work with their hands, they're manual laborers at the start of the film, aren't they?
Yeah,
well, a lot of them are anyway. And looking at how those two things like clash in this film is really interesting, I think.
I do think, and it's not at all that topic, but in terms of the Dom turning evil, what I don't think I ever really appreciated until this time is that like the proof he needs to know that Cipher like knows everything about him is that she knows his coffee order, and she's like, go down the street and get the coffee with black. It's just like, she'd have followed you like this morning. Like that's not proof of
Yeah,
anything.
yeah.
Like he's like, oh my god, she knows everything about. Like it's the simplest. Like I know eventually, like late, but like that's even before she shows the picture of like we don't know if it's baby B or whatever, right? But like she's like, I know your coffee order. He's like, oh my god, this.
What else does she know?
Life. It's like, come on, man.
We talked about that when we watched it this time, where she says like it took a lot of work to get you here today, Dom. And it's like, well, you've just parked a car on a street next to him, and you've orchestrated this. You've closed his favorite restaurants. You've made him do some kind of circuitous route around Havana to get there. But it's like, why didn't you just park outside his flat, like his apartment?
I don't know.
And like, also, it's the classic thing of he's just been to buy a baguette and a single rose.
It's beautiful.
It's like, was that part of your plan, Cipher? It's the weirdest.
And also the thing is like, she's one of the most beautiful women in the world next to a broken down car, his favorite thing in the world, right? It's just like, of course.
Of a completely different ethnicity
difficult.
that you don't see in this place that she is in, and nobody notices her.
The shopping bag as well really struck me this time, because I don't know about if this was like it with you, but I remember you reminded me of my dad on holiday when he came around with the baguette. Like my dad never wanted to do any shopping when we're at home, but when he went out on holiday, he'd love doing the shopping. And then when he turns around the corner, he's got his little shopping bag. It's reminded me of my dad.
You're right. I don't think that Dom Toretto's ever stepped foot in a grocery store, right? Not once in his
Market
life.
Cafe, right? Like that's the only one.
Yeah. And he doesn't even, maybe he places I think Mia probably still places the orders there too.
I think so, yeah.
There is actually a shot in 8 from just before that during the opening montage, and there seems to be another bag with a baguette in it being like pulleyed up the side of the building. It's just in it for a second, but there seems to be the producers of the film were clearly like, what signifies that Cuban spirit? It's baguette in a tote bag.
What I also just realized in terms of that is like, I don't think Vin Diesel, the actor, Dominic Toretto, the man, is the one to eat carbs at all.
No, he's come on. He's half Italian, half Cuban, even by his own.
But I mean, like, we never see. So we talk about how we never see them like
baguettes.
Getting gasoline or whatever. Like,
yeah.
But we also never see them other than Hobbs and Shaw. We never see them working out. Like, we don't see Dom working out, and he's still like he gets more shredded. Like, it's like he gets in better shape by driving more, right? So
yeah,
I don't know, but it seems like he can't eat baguette and look the way he does. But
he eats a lot of sandwiches. That's a guy that eats many, many sandwiches, Joey.
The sandwiches are so crappy.
No, they're good. They're really good ones. At home, they're good ones. Yeah.
Tuna sandwiches, surely.
How about you, Fraser? What was your favorite scene from the...
I mean, the prison escape. And not just going back to
That's
sort of the Hobbs,
one.
but that we would just the rhythm, the editing, in terms of like the action movie genre, America has maybe not had the best couple of decades compared to sort of India and other parts of the world. But that scene, like, totally rules. I think I remember it was interesting talking about how we first felt about this film versus now. And I remember when I first watched it, I was also a bit lukewarm on it, even though actually it's the first film that we all saw together at the cinema, the first Fast and Furious film. And part of it was the kind of, it doesn't really know what to do with Hobbs and Shaw. It's trying to make them more personalities, but they're kind of comedy. The vibe doesn't really fit. Like the baby in the plane at the end is sort of like from a different movie. There's just some strangeness going on there. But that scene brings it all together. Their personalities, they're so funny. The line delivery, they beat your ass like a Cherokee drum. Just for some reason, when Shaw breaks his lock, just the whole prison unlocks every door, which is like a terrible design for a black site prison. And there's just such a good action scene. I mean, like The Rock does a slide off the balcony and bounces off a wall. And, he's trying not to attack the police, but just trying to attack the prisoners. But then some police shoot him with rubber bullets. So then he just goes on everyone. I love that scene an awful lot. And I think the other thing that I really loved watching at this time was just, this is maybe the film where they went buck wild on the terrible one-liners from Cipher and everything. And there's the one line that I remember but seeing it again, where Cipher says, "Why live your life a quarter mile at a time when you could live your whole life that way?" Which every time it happens, something just breaks in my brain. I don't know what that means, Cipher. Why live your life when you could live your life? Yeah.
Do you guys personally enjoy how they've embraced like the corniness and like the self-reflection? Like, like, you guys talk about it in the book, but like now that you brought up like the cheesy one-liners and stuff like that, going to space, all of these kind of things, do you personally enjoy that as a fan of the franchise, or would you like them to go a different direction, any other direction?
I think that was my favorite bit in Fast 10, the new agent, the sort of new nobody guy, and he's giving the rundown of the team's history. Yeah.
Yes, when he's in the room. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was my favorite bit. So that sort of stuff definitely hits with me, but I can understand why, if you're arriving at this franchise late, it all feels a bit corny, it all feels a bit cheesy. But yeah, I love that sort of stuff. Yeah.
The bits that don't work for me are the references to other things like Star Wars, the Star Wars jokes, and
Game of Thrones
things, Game of Thrones, like that stuff. It's sort of like I don't need Fast and Furious to exist in the same world as Star Wars. I don't know why. It's just it brings the franchise into a space that I'm not used to it being in. I don't know. I can't really articulate it, but I don't mind the self-referential stuff at all. It's for some reason it's the other pop culture references.
Yeah, I think that there's always, what I think is interesting, if you look at like the first film, I think there was humor in it, but it was primarily, right, not.
Yeah.
But the second one, so much of that was in there, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think like, a lot of the films, maybe when they're more, I think 8's interesting because it as much as it tries to kind of set up these connecting pieces and kind of give a reason why they end up, on a submarine coming through an ice shelf, right? They also kind of tonally are a bit kind of all over the place. So I think maybe, and I guess Hobbs and Shaw is like the exact opposite of that, right? Because it's sort of more of comedy action film than it is anything else. But yeah, I quite like the corniness of it, but I'm never going to get over that Cipher line either. And the whole thing about the crocodile, I'm just like, this actually makes no sense. Like, I'm down with it being funny. I'm down with corny one-liners, but this business, no.
There's something that I picked up on this time that we have talked about for sure on the show before, and you also cover in the book about how this was kind of like a way to see if like a Hobbs and Shaw movie could work, right? It's just like, let's see if they sort of spin them off within this movie and see if they have the chemistry. It also felt like to me, and they don't nearly have the star power, but it feels like the movie's also like, especially at least maybe just in the extended, like the 2.5 hours as opposed to the 2:15 or whatever, it feels like they're doing the same thing with Roman and Little Nobody. And it's like, could they do their own thing? And everybody's just like, we don't want that. But like, it does feel like they're more commonly paired up than like and more frequently featured in the same kind of like one-liners, busting each other's balls a little bit. Like I'm like, because knowing, again, having the from the book, just having that fresh in my mind about they're using this as a platform to launch maybe a spin-off franchise or whatever. I'm like, are they doing it here, or they just don't have anything else for these characters to do? So like, we'll just have Roman annoy. I almost confused myself by like, they aren't really actually trying to do this, but maybe I don't know.
It felt to me, I picked up on that a little bit, and it felt to me watching it this time, they were setting up Little Nobody to take the place of Mr. Nobody. Obviously, he takes the place within this film, but I assume because of what happened with Kurt Russell that they had plans to do it. I actually think it works pretty well in this film, the Little Nobody back and forth with Roman. And again, he goes on a little journey, doesn't he, of being very much the agency man who does everything the right way. He's all about rules, and then he has to change and become more like them, and he begins dressing like them at the end. And what I was surprised, actually, in the subsequent films after this was why they didn't bring him back more, I thought. Because I quite like him as a character in this. I think the comedy between them, as you say, busting his balls, making fun of him being very much the agency man, it made me laugh, I think. But,
it feels like they don't know what they're doing with the agency. Like, Joe, do you want to share your theory about like your grand idea of what Mr. Nobody's all about? Because like, it feels like at one point they were heading toward this like almost, or maybe just because we talked about it so much, it felt like a seeming inevitability, and now it's just like maybe not. But
I had a theory that Mr. Nobody is actually the big bad, and maybe that they've been working for him and doing jobs for him that are actually not for the good of humanity. And because like he disappears in 9, right? They're like, what's happening? I thought that Brie Larson, like, even when she was like, that's my dad, maybe that he's still the bad guy and she's like on the good side, or like the agency's bad. I don't know. I've been trying to work it out, especially after like reconciling with what happens in 10. But for a while there, I was like Etion is actually just part of like, he's the head. And then like Etion is just like his umbrella corporation that he's running. So, and then
like each movie that comes out, like they don't have Kurt Russell come back. We're like, what are they doing? Like, what are you waiting on? And so it's just, I don't know. It's strange. So I have a very, it's a lap 13 question. Whereas like, but I don't think we've ever talked about this before. So I understand that this is in here for the Ramsey is a 10 joke. Like she has a perfect body, whatever. But when they say you all made the top 10, Hobbs is 6, Letty is 8, Tej is 9, Ramsey's 10, Roman's 11. I never thought about it, but I don't think those rankings make any sense. Like Ramsey, I think, should be the highest because she is a globally known hacker
who invented God's Eye. Yeah.
Hobbs feels like kind of like a wild card because like he used to be like a high-ranking government guy, military guy, whatever, who turned evil. Letty, Tej, Roman all kind of make sense together, but like I know it's for a joke, but like Ramsey should be way higher, right?
We had the exact same conversation when we saw Sarah and I when we rewatched it this time. Specifically, yeah, if you compare like some street racers who have done some crime to somebody who is a cyber terrorist who is threatening every sort of international government through satellite technology, hacking, and sort of cyber surveillance, it is absolutely ludicrous, as it were, no pun intended, that the rest of the guys would be higher than her.
Right.
Yeah.
She invents God's Eye, doesn't she? She's the inventor. Yeah. So, and this is the thing that they're all obsessed with. So yeah, it would make sense.
But she cannot drive.
No. Well, I mean, she eventually can. She eventually learns.
But at this moment, that's why she's 10. She cannot drive.
It makes me wonder who like 1 through 5 and 7 are. You have to think that one of them is probably Dom. One of them might be Cipher. But like Brian's not in Germany. Like he's a known associate, but like he's not there. It's the weird kind of like, who knows? I know it's there for a joke, but I'm just like, I gotta know, why is she?
Yeah, who we leaving off this list and who we that's yeah.
I also do want to say, like, this is the lab we discovered. I don't know if any of you know, on IMDb, there's a feature called Crazy Credits, which originated because, like, in movies like Airplane, they did, like, silly, wacky things, like they credit people and whatever, and it's like, it used to be a way to catalog and preserve and immortalize those things. And then it became just people describing what's in the credits, and it's weird and boring and always disappointing, but there's no crazy credits for this movie. There is 0 for Fate of the Furious, so nothing about these credits.
Go make the first one. Somebody listening out there, go make the first crazy credit.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'll have to go back because when we were writing the book, I remember I saw credits. I'm positive it's for Tokyo Drift, and there were some of the most absolutely ridiculous descriptors for minor
like exceedingly
characters.
Handsome guy.
Yes, that's exactly it. That's exactly
my favorite
it.
character in the entire franchise, and you know exactly what it is. Just the guy who like is exceedingly handsome, who drops a cigarette to start the race. Mm-hmm. Yep. No, it's crazy, but it's also spot on. Actually, as we've had other British guests before, but what do you think and I don't mean to lump Scotland in with Britain. I don't know how to refer to any of these countries. I apologize if I offended anyone with me saying British. But what do you think of Ms. Rita Ora, global superstar that she is, being the race starter in Fast and Furious 6? Do you like her as a choice? Would you have preferred someone else, or are you okay with Rita Ora in that role?
I'm not okay with it. I don't know what the other people. Yeah, that's one of those, maybe a bit like what you were saying before, Fraser, where that cameo, I don't know for what reason, because there's loads of cameos in these films, aren't there? Especially like one later, but that one really doesn't feel right to me. It didn't sit right to me. I don't know about you, Fraser, because I saw you grimacing when it was mentioned. So.
No, well, the only thing I would say is that Rita Ora is fascinating as, I don't know what her sort of how well she is known in the States, but she is someone who seems to somehow have a career based around a music career, but she never seems to release any music.
Oh, she released an album this year, Fraser. I will have you know. She put out a new album this year.
I'm totally wrong. So at least that music doesn't seem to sort of penetrate the mainstream in a way that other celebrities do. But she has totally mastered the periphery, the tie-ins, the cameos, the kind of, gossip magazines. Her and Taika Waititi are always around doing things. And I'm always just like, wow, she is an incredible business person in this space. So it fits for her more than it fits for the UK, I think, to have her start the race.
So she just exists like purely as celebrity.
I think so, yeah.
I have a very warped, twisted perspective on her because a podcast I've mentioned on here a lot, but Who Weekly, which is like a celebrity gossip podcast, but not talking about like A-listers, talking about like Rita Ora level and like reality stars. Literally every episode does a segment called What's Rita Up To? And What's Rita Ora Up To? And they check in on her, and she's always, to your point, Fraser, it's like she's hosting this reality show, she's on this fashion show, she and Taika are doing this, and it's just like, but how do you sleep? And like she's always doing things without a base. Like she's essentially famous now for being famous, but she did start with music. She's still doing the music thing, but like the music thing doesn't work, so she's gonna do other stuff too. So yeah, she had an album come out and then a single that wasn't on the album because she's like, oh, you don't like this? Here's a single, and the single was better. I don't know, whatever. But Sarah, what do you think? Do you like Rita as a British representation?
I have actually no idea who she is, so I'm the odd man out in this conversation.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
No, you gotta dive deep. She is worth exploring, but she's the one who goes, "This is London, baby," and then in Fast and Furious 6. So okay,
because she was a presenter on The Voice, I think, in the UK, was she?
Mm-hmm.
And she
Probably.
delivers that. Yeah, she delivers that line just exactly like did everything on that show, which is. I think that's why it really doesn't sit right. I'm expecting the chairs to swivel around or something. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah.
Here's another UK question for you. A character we have not yet met is Papa Shaw, who we were always jockeying to be Michael Caine, but Michael Caine just retired from acting. So considering he's off the table, do the three of you have a recommendation for who you would like to see as the father of Deckard and Owen and Hattie, assuming that they're all from the same father, husband to Queenie?
Oh, I got one at the end.
You're
I
not
just had
British.
one.
You don't count.
I know, but I just had one come into my head.
Okay.
Ian McKellen.
Oh,
I reckon. Because Helen Mirren, she's kind of like, and I say this as a huge fan of the franchise, she's kind of slumming it. She's like thespian actor, and clearly this is her like, I'm retired. I don't know. I've had a great career. Let me have some fun and Fast and Furious. Ian McKellen, similar kind of dramatic legacy and history, and also occasionally appears in soap operas on British TV.
Sure, okay.
So I could totally see him, I
think that's a great choice.
Yeah, that would be my choice. What about you guys?
I think I'd go, the obvious choice for me would be Ray Winstone, but whether that would work, I don't, because the ages are all off in the Shaw family. Like, Hobson Shaw plays around with that completely, having Vanessa Kirby as the sister, and the ages are complete. I don't know how old Ray Winstone is compared to.
So Ray Winstone is 66. Helen Mirren is 78, but they're all like, they both be 60. Like when they bring in Rita Moreno, it's like, are you mom or grandma? Like, there's no way you're Vin Diesel's grandmother, but yet she is, right? Because he's 28 or whatever he's supposed to be. Yeah. Forever. Okay, but yeah, close enough. I think that works. Josh, Sarah, what about you? Idea for Papa Shaw?
I think that I enjoyed watching Brian Cox and Helen Mirren in Red so much, and I just thought they. So I guess that's probably influencing that choice. But I think he'd be an interesting addition.
Although if he's angry that Succession made him like super famous and he can't do anything, he's like whining about like one of the best roles he's ever had in his career. Like, I don't think he's going to do these movies, but I would also love to see, because he would, like we always play, in the PG-13 movies, you get one use of the word fuck. He would absolutely get the fuck in the movie that he's in, right? So,
yes.
I
had a secret thought. Okay, what if, just hear me out, that maybe just Owen Shaw's dad is actually Mick Jagger.
Oh, for the Hobbs and Shaw tie-in.
For the Hobbs and Shaw tie-in, and because he's British, and because that would just be like the coolest shit ever that Helen Mirren was like, oh yeah, Rolling Stones were in town.
Oh, you mean like, so not like the actual, like, his father in the movies is not played by Mick Jagger. His father is actually Mick Jagger.
Both.
Okay. Mick Jagger playing Mick Jagger.
Mick Jagger actually exists in this world.
Okay.
And he's playing Mick Jagger, who's the father of only, like, not Deckard's father. Not Hattie. Maybe Hattie's too.
That would be perfect. And Mick Jagger's a good actor as well, because if he was playing the performance Mick Jagger as well, like that sort of version of Mick Jagger, that would be incredible. Yeah.
And it would make sense that, like, Helen Mirren would be there. Like, Mick Jagger would be like, oh, Helen Mirren, look at this babe, you know? Like, back in the day, he'd be like, yeah, told you.
What was I can't remember now, in Hobbs and Shaw, right? They had the whole thing between Deckard and Hattie with, like, they had these
the kids' games.
Nicknames. Yeah. Because that had to do with what did it have to do with? Was it like
they were
names
like scams or schemes that they would do that they did as kids, and that's when when they
would give them rock star names.
Yeah, Mick Jagger, Keith Moon, or whatever, right?
So maybe that's why.
Yeah,
because of their dad.
That's what I'm saying.
Their dad was never around because he was touring the world as a rock star.
Yeah,
boy. So does that mean that Keith Moon is Deckard's dad?
No, Deckard's dad's just like some like military guy that she was first married to, and then when he was like away, she like met Mick Jagger and had an affair, and spawned them.
One thing we've been doing all lap long is we've been cataloging, because each of our laps has a theme, and this is the planes, trains, but no automobiles lap, because in between these movies, we're watching movies that have like a vehicle chase or a prominent vehicle that's not a car, and so we've been cataloging all the non-cars in all these movies, and I have a bunch, but there's also a point in this movie where I'm just like, there's not a lot of vehicles. Like, there's like a 45-minute stretch where I'm just like, they're just on a plane and in a warehouse. Like, there's not even cars for a lot of this movie. I'm like, this is so weird. But Joe, I've got a handful. What did you catch here in terms of non-car vehicles?
You go first. I forgot, and I'm now thinking through in my head.
Joe,
sorry.
This is your favorite thing every episode. We've only done it like 27 times this lap.
Are zombie cars actual?
I wrote down zombie cars are not a new type of vehicle, right? Okay. So the opening water, where it's Havana, Cuba, not a single boat. Zero boats. And I'm like, where's all the boats? No boats. But there are motorcycles and bikes in Havana.
Yes.
Hobbs is like a kind of a military vehicle. It's car adjacent when they steal the EMP, but like it's like a more muscly kind of car. There's the prison transport bus.
Yes.
Cipher's plane. The toy shop where they go to with Blanta. There's mostly cars there, but there is also a helicopter and a straight up tank in that room. When they go to where the submarine is, there's the submarine and helicopters and snowmobiles and a snow tank with treads. And also Hobbs kind of has like a snow plow, which is like a car but with a plow, a little bit different. I think that's all I found, but that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10-ish, which is pretty decent. Do any of you remember another non-car in this movie?
There's a horse and cart in the Havana
sequence.
Does that count?
We establish. I don't know. It's a large argument that we've been having with our listeners for a while. But no. But horses. I think horse and cart counts. For me, yes.
I did not write down Cipher's parachute because we talked about that being not a vehicle. But I was like, no, not a parachute. We can't. We exempted that. So
yeah.
Because then you might get into a baby carrier.
Yeah.
Could you count Roman's car door bobsled?
Oh, car door, like a sled, kind of, right? Like a little. I like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot in the snow. Like, they really give us our money's worth for non-cars in that snow scene.
Snowmobiles are cool. That's always a cool addition of everything. It's just like a snow jet ski, right? Where's Mark Hoffmeyer when we need him?
Seriously.
Well, this film is the most Bond-like, and that whole snow section just feels like they're just really leaning into the Bond thing and Cipher's monologues and everything. But yeah, it's enjoyable, I think. But I really wanted to see Dom get on skis at some point and do a bit of a triple X.
Triple X: The Return of Xander Cage, where he skis through the jungle, right? Like, that's, we covered all of not all of, but almost all of Vin Diesel's movies, I think, last lap. And there's the scene in that movie where he's on the plane, and there's the young woman who, I don't remember the actress, but like, she's super horny for Xander. And every time I watch this movie, I'm like, I put her into this movie, and I'm like, oh, she's on this plane. But no, like, Cypher's plane is all business. But I'm like, there's that girl who really wants to fuck Vin Diesel. Where is she? Oh, no, she's in a different movie. But, yeah, I don't know. Any other thoughts about, because we have a couple games to play, and I want to talk about the book a little bit more, but any other thoughts about The Fate of the Furious?
Actually, it's just a very small thought, but you just reminded me by saying the name again there, is that I was very confused on this rewatch about how they understand the word fate. Cipher is always talking about fate when she doesn't actually mean fate, when she gives someone a choice. And then the twist is that they didn't have a choice because just behind this curtain is a man with a bazooka who will shoot you, whichever decision you make. It's fate. And it's like, I don't know if that's fate, Cipher. I think you just, rigged this very small decision that he could have made. And I was wondering, and I'd be interested to know what you think, whether the theme of fate was written into the script because they came up with the pun for the title before they started writing the script, or how that works out, because fate's not a huge part of the franchise. I'm saying cautiously with two much more familiar people than I am. But in this film, they're always chatting about fate in between watering holes and tigers and crocodiles and everything else. So I'd love to hear what you all thought of that.
That would imply that they actually think about the movies as they write them, right? Like,
True.
We talked about F9 for especially because I was delayed because of COVID. Like, talked about that for 2.5 years. And until we saw the movie in theaters, and even then we're like, we don't know what this movie's called. Like, is it F9? Is it Fast 9? Is it the Fast Saga now? Because Vin was going around being like, it's the Fast Saga. We're like, is that this
Vin
movie
called it 3 different things. Yeah.
And we're just like, we don't know what it was. And I think it's just F9, but even then I'm just I'm not 100% sure. So is the Fate of the Furious, did they write in Fate, or did they come up with people wanted fast 10-year seatbelts. They didn't do that, right? So I don't know. There's names out there.
I 100% think that this is, Vin was like, it's going to be F8, Fate stylized, and he's like, yeah, put some more Fate in this. Sprinkle some more Fate in this movie. And he had the other writers add in as many things of Fate that he could, and he was like, yeah, that works. That's cool. And okayed it. I don't think that he necessarily did, but I think he was a strong influence to be like, we should keep all this cool Fate puns happening in this movie to run with the title, because it just seems like that would be a decision that he would make, in my opinion.
Yeah,
that maybe explains the Cipher monologues and the way they don't make sense. If he's just shouting off camera, more Fate, mm-hmm. Just handing her notes.
There was a note that I made from the book where they talk about Vin as the fanboy auteur.
I love this term. This was my term when I said I learned new words. Fanboy auteur is, we've danced around a word for that for so long, but yes, go ahead.
He's like, I'm making the movies, but also I love these movies the way you do. We're like, yeah, but he straddles that line. I thought that was very, also Diesel emerges as the franchise custodian. I'm just like, okay, yeah, pretty cool.
But it is interesting that he's constantly like, we are doing this, and it's like, no, you're doing this. But he includes us, which is very familial and cool. Mm-hmm. And as we've seen and said and talked about on our show endlessly, they do listen to the fans. They'll make weird turns, and it's just because we really like Han and we really want more Han. So they're like, fine, give it to him. Do it. Go to space. Who cares? They'll do it.
Yeah.
I think that's what's so interesting about this film, though. That I guess bringing Shaw is to some degree listening to the fans, but in a large degree not, isn't it? It's one of the most controversial decisions they've made. Yep. So, and watching it again, the integrating Shaw into the family really didn't work. I don't think, bearing in mind, just legally it doesn't work. He kills about 40 cops, doesn't he, at the start of Furious 7, I think, right? It's not just Han that he has to pay for in some ways. I don't know.
No, but I think that's it is a smart move. As diehard fans, you don't want this, but as any other more passive fan that people aren't like us are, it's oh, we get more Jason Statham, not we get the guy that killed Han. So it's a controversial decision to a subset of the fandom, but I think overall, it was a really smart move and something that they couldn't pass up doing if Jason Statham wants to do more of these, right?
Well, I think there's something that we've talked a lot on this show about something that you cover in at least one of the essays about the diversity and how there's a lot more racial diversity in these films than in a lot of other franchises, right? But as you point out, or whoever writes that, I don't remember if one of you wrote the essay or if someone else wrote that essay, but they talk about how a lot of that is not necessarily weighty, meaty stuff. It's a lot of Roman jokey lines. But something that I I had my eyes open to in the book that we never talked about, in spite of saying like this cast is so diverse. Like aside from like LGBTQ, like there's not a lot of queer characters. Like there are in the video game and in Spy Racers, but not in the main franchise. But I didn't really think about like since, and you point out in the book, since Hobbs, basically every new edition is a white person. And it's like, this used to be so racially diverse, and now it's just like, well, now we got Statham, now we got Hattie.
Well, they filled out all the boxes in the family already, and we don't have room for anybody else.
Well, it's like they hate, and there's the whole thing that maybe Fraser, you wrote about the Chinese box office, I think, right? Like where they've done such a big job of like making sure that they play in every market. And they're like, well, we're in every market now, so we might as well just add more white people, right?
Yeah.
It's just like
Back
all
to the
most
basics.
famous people in the world are white, so like let's add John Cena, let's add Charlize Theron. It's like, oh my god, I can't believe like you lose a bit of that diversity. Yeah. And even like so much of that, like the diversity in the book is, or in the franchise in terms of like dialogue is Vin, is Dom, and it's like, well, he's still kind of mostly sort of white. Like we don't really know. Like he doesn't say, right? So that was a very, like I liked a lot about the book, but that was just like, oh yeah, they kind of used to walk the walk, and now they kind of don't really anymore.
Yeah, I think because I wrote that with a great scholar. He's called Pete Jones, but he's the one who did all the number crunching on every. He watched every film, counted every line of dialogue. And then we had these conversations, and yeah, we noticed that they become more risk averse as they become more successful. The films become this huge box office gargantuan thing, and then all of a sudden they begin to take less risks in terms of the casting. Whereas the first few films, they could afford to take the risk because they were smaller budget, there weren't the expectations, and as you said, bringing in the likes of Charlize Theron, Kurt Russell, Jason Statham, these are all tried and tested names who are going to be popular, but don't have that sort of, I guess, that diversity that we came to love, I guess, the nature of the family in those opening films. So
no, and I think there's something to like, there's a real split and divide among fans of like liking earlier movies versus later movies, and I think there's a tendency, like a lot, the more we watch these movies, the more of these new movies that come out. Like I think I like the earlier ones better because the new ones kind of feel samey in terms of the MCU style, the Mission Impossible, the like all good movies, all fun to watch, but also now they kind of look more samey, that it's filled with white people, as opposed to like you watch Too Fast, like it's a very diverse cast and just like not my favorite movie, but at least it feels unlike almost anything else that was coming out at the time, right? So it looks and feels different. I think that was a really good essay in the book for sure.
Yeah, I think it's that thing, the further, it's almost like what we were talking about before as well. It's the first film's based on that subculture of street racing, which, as Mary Beltran talked about, is a really racially diverse community. And then the further they get away from it, the more and more they become like James Bond, like Ethan Hunt, then almost, it also works in that way, doesn't it? And yeah, it's an interesting one, definitely. And yeah, counting up the dialogue, it was just something that occurred to us as we went through. And Fraser's work on China as well was really useful as well for exploring all those sorts of things, I think. Yeah.
Well, it's also like the Fraser, like you can maybe elaborate on a little bit more, but just like it kind of blurs, like to be successful there, you have to like play by their rules, and it's like how much do they actually want to do what they want to do, and how much is it like, well, China's like, well, you have to do this now if you want to play here, right? So if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think because since the Chinese box office sort of exploded in the 2010s and became one of the biggest, if not the biggest, in the world, and we saw all these Hollywood studios trying to get into that market by trying to appeal to both the audience but also the censors there. So yeah, there's no age classification system in China. So if you release a film there, it needs to be suitable for all ages. It can't contain explicit sex, violence. There are some it's all a bit vague, but there are some rules about things like skeletons and ghosts that shouldn't be included, as well as obviously the political stuff. And I think the really interesting thing about Fast and Furious is that a number of the films have been co-produced by China, but that's not part of the narrative of how they're seen or discussed in the rest of the world. Fate
until
of the
John
Furious,
Cena, runs his mouth, and then it becomes like international news.
Exactly, yeah. But pre John Cena's blunder, like rewatching Fate of the Furious, China Film companies all over the kind of credits, the crazy or the lack thereof of crazy credits for this film. China's all over it. But I think they're really interesting. What I find most interesting is that Fast and Furious just seems to be kind of uniquely compatible with the Chinese box office, so it doesn't need to censor itself because it's already, kind of disappointingly sexless. It's already occasionally quite conservative in its politics, and it's not taking pot shots at any major countries. It's just these vague organizations.
Was the first movie ever really screened there? Because the first movie is pretty horny, at least compared to like later movies. Did that ever get prominence, or was it was just like later movies like 5, 6, 7, like 7 and beyond, really, right?
So I don't know about those early ones. I have to say I was sort of looking more at the ones that were co-produced or released more recently since the kind of transition to heist movies, because also the Chinese box office was pretty small and insular before sort of the late 2000s, so it's kind of hard to go back and look there. I'm pretty sure there would have been a strong home media scene for those Fast and Furious movies, and like Initial D, the manga there's like a Hong Kong version. Those films are really popular in China, so I wouldn't be surprised if those films made it. But in terms of cinema releases that were big enough to be reported on, it was more the later ones, sort of post.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Another thing I liked about the book, just a quote. So I think the book does a really good job of like sourcing quotes. Like a lot of researchers like finding other things that have other things that other people have written about it. But like very early in the book, it's just there's a quote from someone where it just says, "The cars in these films are, quote, completely and unapologetically unbound from any real world understanding of how cars actually work." It's like, yeah, that's why we love these movies. Like you succinctly put it up. So thank you for that. Also, you referenced that calling Mendelsohn writes about The Rock as franchise Viagra, which is like a thing that we had heard and then we couldn't find sourced, and we're like, did we make that up? We didn't make that up, but like we couldn't find.
Somebody said it. We read it somewhere at some point.
There.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we've like specifically said that a bajillion times.
One of the many times in the book, I don't think we talked about this while we were recording, but I was complaining that like so many of the essays talk about Paul dying, and I'm just like, please stop doing this. But the one talking about how he like is basically framed and lit like an angel in Fury 7, I'm just like, wow, okay, yeah, And then a lot of the like homoerotic and also like the
This is something we talk about
Mia's
a lot.
baby also as like both Brian's baby and Dom's baby, and just like the way that there's like that love triangle that like is super weird but also makes total sense and like isn't weird if you know the franchise, but if you describe it, it's like it's kind of weird. But then also about how at the end of 7, when Dom is maybe dead and Brian's not there, like Brian should be the one holding him, and they're like maybe he didn't have the footage or whatever. And I'm just like, yeah, like that would have been really powerful to have like Brian cradling Dom as maybe China's just like, hold on, what are we doing here, right? But was there a particular essay or particular thing about the editing of the book that each of you found that you were like most surprised by or happiest about, like something that you discovered, like your favorite little bit in the book?
For us, the way that we had done is we put out an open call, right, for essays. So I think that part of that is that there were some people who we had known their scholarship or had a relationship with them, so kind of knew what we were maybe going to get. But a lot of the scholars we hadn't known. So I think that part of probably for all of us, I think in our discussions was just how great that was to be introduced to it. But other than obviously the fantastic essays we've already talked about that Fraser and Josh wrote, I think it was the last one about wrestling and that Rob Watts wrote, because for me it was, having watched kind of in like that golden age of WWF, hadn't really seen how so many of those techniques were both showing up in the film, but also in the marketing for the film. So I think that kind of put together a lot of things for me. And plus to put in the index candy asses as one of the research terms was a great joy.
Yeah, there's something like there's about like putting quotes in there, whether they're things you're sourcing or things that you're writing, but like there is a book forever on the market that includes the line, quote, "where attractive bald men come to thrive." It's like, yeah, that's these movies. Like that's academically how to describe these movies. It's like, are you a handsome bald man? We got a home for you, right? So
And the WWE thing is crazy because for a while we were arguing that the beef, like outwardly, that you're seeing between The Rock and Vin was just wrestling promo. We were saying that it was playing too much like it, that one of them posts something on Instagram, the other one goes on a show and says, he's an idiot, I'll never go back. And then he does come back, right? At the end of 10, we see him. So we're like, the more that we learn about The Rock and Vin, the more we're thinking, yes, they probably have giant egos, and we're two men that were probably egotistically jealous of each other. Fine. But at the same time, like, it kind of did play out just like a wrestling bit, right? Like, that's just how it works.
Well, there's the essay in here, and it's another thing, I never want to lose a fight, where I never thought about this, but we had heard about, we talked about like how they have like the punch for punch, like you can't get punched more than you punch, right? But you make the note in here that like none of them really win fights either. They all just kind of end, right? And it's like, that's weird. Like they don't lose fights, but they don't win fights either, which is not a common thing, right? So it's a very strange, but I think that's a very good point. Everyone wins. There's a strange symmetry that affects the fight scenes whereby everyone comes out the victor. Just like, everybody can't win. That's not how a fight works. Somebody's got to lose, right? But like these movies are like,
you'd think
they're all good.
Especially with dominant characters like The Rock and Vin Diesel. That's what's so good about Rebecca's essay, in that it's almost, they're so macho that they just eclipse any chance of wiping each other out. You know, they cancel each other out. Two massive egos. Yeah. And it was the same when we were talking about what surprises. We mentioned before, you were saying the first film is probably the most sexually explicit, I suppose, but Aaron Hunter's essay in there, Fast, Furious and Free of Sex, it had never really occurred to me until he began pitching that essay, just how...
There's no sex.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, something we talked about in here a lot is that, like, in 10, right, when they're like, baby B's asleep, and then what he wants to do is put his head on Letty's belly. Like, it's not like they want to have sex to have sex. Like, they want to have sex to have a baby. Like, they want more family.
It's like, it's a generation of new family. That's what this is.
Christian, chaste, we have sex, and I don't even like calling it sex, to reproduce, and that's it. It's like, we want more family. It's like, well, okay.
And that happens in Fate of the Furious as well, when you have sort of Dom and Letty having their sort of Cuban, you know, in the curtains, and it's all a bit sort of sexy, and then they sit down and they're like, have you ever thought about children? And it's sort of like, oh, I thought, you know, we were going to go somewhere with here, but no.
Nope.
Always kids, more family. That's the only reason why we do this.
That's what's so fascinating about Los Bandoleros, though, isn't it? To go back to that. The chemistry was really there, and it's so odd, but I guess it fits on this idea of pitching this to as wide a market as possible, that Los Bandoleros can have that, but the rest of the franchise can't as it moves forward. And yeah, it's a shame, because, I mean, one of the things we found when we were researching it is just how often people mention that the initial cast were just all incredibly attractive, weren't they? It's
incredibly attractive. Down the line, they hit the mark. Yep, exactly.
I also do want to say, in that Los Bandoleros essay, you have forever committed to ink and paper, quote, the odor of skanks. So that is forever in libraries around. By the way, like, if people want to buy this book or read this book, I know it was very expensive. It's becoming a little bit more expensive. Is there a place that people can buy this affordably? Like, how do people get their hands on it if they want to read these essays?
You can always get in touch with us if you're a researcher and you want to do it, and we're just to share it. But whether we should be saying that, maybe we're academic in that way. But hopefully, we're hoping a paperback will come out not too long. Hopefully, maybe mid 2024, and it should be much cheaper.
Very cool.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's really good news for our listeners, because a lot of people are super, super curious about reading the book. But, you know, it's an academic text. We know how it works. I think all of us went to school.
Yeah, Joe still works at a school, right? Yep.
I still work at a school. I know how this works. And it's not like you guys are seeing the money from the book. So understood. I had a general question. Like, what are you guys using the text for right now? Like, do you use it in a course? What is the course? Is it like a part of it, the entire course? Can you tell?
I'm using it at the moment with, I have a final year undergraduate sort of module, which is about contemporary American cinema. And I do 4 weeks on action. So I get them to read bits of the book, and we watch The Fast and the Furious. And we also watch one of the later films and compare and contrast and see how much is
which one do you choose for the later one? Which movie do you choose? Have you switched it around? Is there one that you go to?
Yeah, I used to do Fate of the Furious, but recently I've gone to Fast and Furious 6. And then maybe if I ever have the time, because you have to fit it in a timetable, I'll go for Fast 10. But as the films get longer and longer, it's incredibly hard.
Oh, we know.
Yep.
Yeah.
I use the book we have a course at Edinburgh called Mediating Film, where we talk about how films are mediated for audiences, and we do a week on the franchise film. So we look at we look at Furious 7, because it's a really nice case study that kind of explodes a lot of the current thinking around franchises as being, very pre-planned, part of these transmedia, all of these questions. And it's a very strange franchise film, partly due to Paul Walker's death and what that means for how audiences relate to the film. But it's a really useful example of telling the students, in some ways this really fits what we think of when we think of a franchise film, but in other ways it's totally different. So it's a nice kind of messy example that we can use to get the students thinking. And I get to traumatize a group of students every year with Paul Walker's death, because a lot of our students are from China, and it seems that actually Paul Walker's death was really hit hard with a lot of the fans in China. So there's always a couple of students that get very upset, and I start the class with "See you again." I put it on when they're walking in. So it always gets you can kind of it's a good way of identifying the fans, because they'll kind of do a little. Yeah.
See you again will get my wife in the grocery store.
Yeah,
man.
we've talked about how that cannot be played in public. Like it's a trigger warning for way too many people.
Yeah.
Yes. It probably speaks badly of my teaching. But I would agree with you.
You're separating the family from the non-family, right? Sarah, how do you use the book in your day-to-day?
So I use it in a class I teach for undergraduates called Researching the Global Creative Industry. So I look at, in particular, the article Josh and Pete wrote about how you can understand, as a method, looking at dialogue networks, because I think that's something that, particularly in the global creative industries, obviously issues around equity, diversity, and inclusion are so important. And sort of how do you actually look at what that is beyond kind of a kind of politics of visibility. So I think what's really interesting about the essay that they wrote is that it looks at kind of what does the action generate and all of those things. But I also teach a class on audience engagement. So I'll now use your podcast as an example. So perhaps we'll have to have you come and talk to our students, maybe virtually, about what you're doing.
Oh,
very cool.
People are fans of this franchise, so it's always a nice place to find other friends. And I think that a lot of people do, as fans, find comfort in the franchise, and it actually has become a family. Like, you guys talk a lot about family in the book, and how Vin uses the word family in the movies, and in the promo uses the word family. But from my personal experience, it really, like, if you're a fan of the franchise, it is really familial. So I think that they do it right.
I'm never not surprised by like how, like, every time a new lap starts, I'm like, I gotta find another, like, every time it's like another person, like another, because there's another movie, another whatever. But like I'm always surprised by, I'm never surprised, but I'm always surprised by the amount of people who will talk about these movies, who passionately care about these movies and have new things to say about them that we have not covered in the like 100 whatever times. Like, we've done 300 episodes of this, but like we've talked about the movies 150 times or whatever, and there's still new things that say, like, it's crazy, right? So I don't know, it's wild.
And everybody loves them, and you'll have scholars that love them, and you'll have people that are our friends that love them, and every background person. And then what we pitch is that Fast and the Furious is for everyone. That's what we've always pitched. So we've, like, had some guests that were like, these movies aren't for me. You said, maybe you don't like cars, maybe you don't, but we're like, no, there's something in it for everyone. If you like action movies, if you like cars, if you like everything,
if
you'll find
just
something.
Like staring at handsome bald men,
you'll find those. I got two of them for you. 3 now, right?
You got so many. Are you ready to find out which Fast and Furious characters you all are?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm going to do, there's 7 questions. We made a quiz. We had found a quiz. The quiz sucked. We made a better quiz. So we have 7 questions. There's 6 multiple choice answers. I'm going to ask the question. I'm going to get each of your answers. I'm going to write them down. Then I'm going to go through. So instead of like doing the whole quiz 3 times, we'll do it 1 time, get all of your answers, and go from there. So no wrong answers. You can explain yourself or not. And we'll just go Josh, Sarah, Fraser, and we'll go in that order.
Also, you could lie. We don't say
lie.
this, but you could just fucking lie if you want. Just pick the answer that you want to. Yeah, whatever.
So, okay. Question number 1. How fast are you? NASCAR, roller coaster, Lamborghini Murcielago, Toyota Prius, Vespa, or Razor scooter? How fast are you?
I'm probably gonna go Prius. Yeah, I'm not at that high level. No,
okay,
not at all.
Sarah?
I probably would get a speeding ticket for going under a speed limit, so I'm going to go Razor scooter.
Okay. And Fraser?
I'm going NASCAR purely because I used to work as a video game tester on NASCAR 2014.
Ooh,
wow.
That's really cool.
Very cool. All right, question number 2. You know it's coming. How furious are you? The Hulk, Kylo Ren, Christian Bale on that one movie set that one time, Mel Gibson, Charlie Brown, or Jack McBrayer from 30 Rock?
I think I'm going to go the Hulk, mainly because I can feel like I've got it simmering under the surface there.
Okay.
You're always angry. Okay, cool. Sarah?
Hulk.
Okay. Fraser?
I am apathetic in the extreme, so I will go for the guy from 30 Rock, which I've not seen.
So you're the fastest and least furious.
Apparently
Yes,
so.
All right.
I'll take it.
We're having a barbecue. How are you all helping? Are you on the grill? Are you saying grace? Are you kicking back with a beer? Are you babysitting? Are you being the entertainment? Or are you sneaking a snack?
Probably whenever there's a barbecue, I'm stood near the person doing the grill to look like I'm doing something. So I'm having a snack, I think.
Okay.
First off, you're the taster. I get it.
Sarah?
Beer.
Fraser?
I'll stand next to Josh. I'll be on the grill.
Okay, very cool. We've got this whole barbecue is shaping up perfect. We've got 3 of the 6 jobs covered.
Yeah, I'm chilling in the back. This is
all
great.
Right. You've got time to kill. What are you doing? Are you grabbing a bite, working on your car, hanging with friends, drinking a beer, working out, or doing some work on your computer?
Yeah, I guess hanging out with friends, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gonna go with beer.
Beer again. Sweet. Fraser?
I'm grabbing a bite.
All right.
Maybe the bite I cooked on the grill previously.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Question number 5. Describe your wedding. I'm never getting married. It's just me and my partner. It's us and our families. It's a backyard country affair. Everyone I know is there. I don't remember.
I'm going to go, it's me and my partner. I'll go Las Bandolera style.
Okay. Love it. Sarah?
Well, with all the beer I'm drinking, I should probably not remember, but I'm actually going to go with I'm never getting married.
Okay. And Fraser?
Also never getting married.
Okay. So we're having barbecues. We're not having very many weddings, though. That's what I'm
yeah.
here. Okay.
That's why we need the barbecues.
I guess so, in lieu of weddings.
Jeez.
I'm now worried, do I have to get married after this? That's the thing I have to propose.
The pressure is all resting on your
But also,
shoulders.
we're not invited to your wedding anyway. It's just you and your partner, right? So like we're not going there, so it's fine.
We're grilling it up somewhere else.
All right, congratulations. You just won the lottery. What are you buying? Your own garage, a private plane, I'm gambling it all away, my childhood home, a fleet of cars, or a new life?
I'm going to go a new life because it could mean you could take that anywhere, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. Sarah?
Fleet of cars.
Okay.
Because, from Detroit.
Love
yeah.
it.
That'll
Fraser?
be fun.
I'm having a new life as well.
Okay. The last question to determine it all, and I have no idea what any of you are because I've not typed it. I've not clued in any of the things. So this is all. We're all. In
There's
the
a
dark
very
here.
sophisticated algorithm behind the scenes. There really is. That's not even a lie.
This was coded by our listener Wes Hampton, who also read the book. We distributed a copy because he is also a researcher, of course, and he did not have any questions, but he did want us to let you know that he enjoyed the book. So he just wanted to. So there you go.
Thanks.
Thank you for
And
reading
question
it.
number 7, to determine it all, what is your drink of choice? Belgian ale, Corona, something fruity, water, whatever's cheapest, or whatever Joe's having at the bar. Just give me one of whatever you're having.
I'm going to go Belgian ale.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm gonna go the same. I want to say Corona, but I'd probably go with a Belgian ale.
You got to live your truth. Fraser?
I'm a non-drinker, so out of those options, something fruity, but it's probably like a soda of some
That's fine.
That could
description,
be fine.
like a mango and passion fruit. Why not?
Okay.
Cranberry juice straight. I get you.
All right, Josh. We've got Prius. We've got Hulk. We've got Snack. We've got Hanging with Friends. Me and My Partner. A New Life. Belgian Ale. You are Han Lu.
Yes.
You are the ultimate example of cool. Even when things are spinning out of control, you keep calm, find a way through, and look smooth doing it. You know the secret to life isn't what you have, but who you keep around you. Your family means everything. They're a reflection of you, so you choose them carefully, and you're always there when they need you. And you drive like the wind blows.
I'm so happy with that.
I feel that's a very accurate description of you, of Josh.
Okay, cool.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, well, that's good to hear that Sarah, you think I'm like him. That's nice. I mean, I couldn't be more happy, really.
All right, so Sarah, also I realized, Fraser and Sarah have like the same rankings, but one of them is very fast and not furious. The other is very slow and super furious, right? So like polar opposites in one, very similar in the other. So Sarah, you've got Razor Scooter, you've got the Hulk as well. You've got kicking back with a beer, drinking a beer, never getting married, buying a fleet of cars, and also the Belgian ale. Sarah, you are Mr. Nobody. People see you as a bit of a mystery, and you love it. You got more going on than anyone realizes, but your greatest joy comes from executing a plan perfectly and leaving everyone around you wondering how you pulled it off. You're great at keeping secrets, but you're always willing to help those who can help you. You don't have family, so to speak, because letting people get too close might dissipate some of your mystical aura, so you'll settle for friends, and you drive like the wind blows.
And I'm also a secret supervillain.
There you go. You are the mastermind.
That's my theory. Always.
And Fraser, you are NASCAR, Jack McBrayer, manning the grill, grabbing a bite, never getting married, buying a new life, or getting a new life, drinking something fruity. Oh,
I think I have a guess.
What's your guess?
My guess is somehow Jesse, but maybe it's not techie enough.
No.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm a little disappointed. I'm happy. I'm a little disappointed. You are also Han.
Wait.
Han only has a 4% chance, and you had very different answers, but you're also Han.
In the strong Hans, you were strongly
So once
Hans.
again, you're the ultimate example of cool. Even when things are spinning out of control, you keep calm, find a way through it, look smooth doing it. The secret to life isn't what you have, but who you keep around you. Your family means everything. They're a reflection of you, so you choose them carefully, and you're always there when they need you, and you drive like the wind blows.
I feel like Josh, you and I need to fight this to the death. We need a quarter mile race.
I think
preferably
if I
not in
remember
Tokyo.
right, Josh was a stronger Han, like he had more points toward Han, but
yeah, there's like a whole scoring system.
I'll take a weaker Han.
There's also the added dynamic here that Sarah somehow faked both of your deaths. Like there's that too.
Yeah. Oh no.
That's material for another book.
Exactly. Well, and they couldn't start a new life unless I had.
Oh, good point. Very good.
Unbelievable. But thank you all so much for joining us this evening to, number one, doing all the work. How many years did this take? Because I'm sure it's measured in years, not months. How many years did this book take from like idea to actually having a copy in your hands?
3.5, maybe. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
COVID happened in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So
that's what I was gonna ask you. I saw like the at the very beginning you guys say COVID. So like you were already had like started planned writing all of these things, and then COVID happens.
Yeah. Which is and then it was great having a really supportive group of people there who all loved a franchise about family, so we could sort of rely on them and lots of understanding about delays and everything like that. So
no, very cool.
I don't want to give you more work to do, but some of these essays, there's obviously stuff that's happened. Movies have come out, feuds have been squashed, beefs have been squashed, whatever. Is there any thought either not to do like another book, but either to edit essays, update essays, do something online, or is this like the book is done, the book is done?
I think we're working on something on franchise Viagra.
Very cool.
Dwayne Johnson, looking at him and the beefs, and we started thinking about that before Fast 10 came out, and then we're gonna have to completely rethink that. But yeah, it should be interesting.
That's what's so weird, because like my boss writes things sometimes, and like he's chosen not to do books because he knows just the process. By the time it comes out, it's like what's in here, especially the earlier stuff, like that's still bulletproof, but like this is basically kind of like ensconced in amber or around the time of F9, right? So like it's like current through there, but there's so much that's happened both on and off screen where it's like not Justin that this is like leaving. Wrong, but it's like incomplete just because it took you 4 years. Like that's crazy, right? So I can see like you should be like so happy with this, but it's also like, oh, I want to make sure that we know like Hobbs is back, right? So
I mean, we actually we started it after Fate of the Furious, and we got the first draft of the chapters in before Fast 9 came out, and a lot of the chapters ended by going, it looks like Han will maybe be back, or it looks like this could possibly happen. Maybe they'll go to space, and we had to, after it came out, we had to email everyone and be like, thanks so much. By the way, when the book comes out, the film has come out, so can you please go back and change those? So we had to do quite a bit of that, actually.
I'm sure that's crazy.
Well,
I think we were also talking about when the paperback comes out, doing something kind of online, that would, and maybe that's one of the things we can take your idea, sort of asking maybe people to kind of, how would you approach what you were doing, the essay that you wrote in the topic, but thinking about what's happened since. So we'll have to make sure that you guys have an invitation or have a special space for that. And I wanted to ask you both actually a question about this. During when we were writing the book during COVID, we also had a film club and tried to watch but mainly about spy racers. But we also tried to watch all of the films that any cast member in Fast and Furious was on Netflix. But we ended up watching this completely bonkers movie with Paul Walker called Timeline. And I don't know if you guys have covered
We didn't cover time. No, we did a Paul Walker lap, but we didn't watch time. We were like selectively choosing them at the time. And
so
we
yeah,
didn't
Paul,
have
we did
as
the
much.
Paul Walker lap early.
Very early.
We had, so like that's one that like in a couple laps we're going to sort of fill in some of those gaps. Directed by Richard Donner of Superman fame. Wow. Okay.
Thank you for the suggestion.
Okay.
Greatly appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I mean, the poster art alone is incredible, right? So
Timeline.
Worth, is it good or just like worth watching because it's like, it's weird?
I think the answer is yes. It's like involves a fax machine and it's like,
okay.
Yeah, it's kind of one of the greatest things I've ever seen. But definitely one for trash cinema, like kind of Academy Awards. What do you guys think?
Similar, yeah. It's just an experience.
Okay, I'm going to make a note of that in the upcoming lap to make sure we do Timeline. 2003's Timeline. Okay.
Beautiful.
There was also the Michelle Rodriguez film where she played Frank Kitchen, which I can't remember what the film was called. Do either of you remember it?
Oh, is that the one where it was like the trans story? Is that one, like the newer one?
Which was,
where people are just like,
Yes, that's the correct noise.
Yeah, that movie was The Assignment, of course. The
Assignment. Oh, of course, God.
We did almost all of her movies, and that's one we're just like, I don't think we need to cover this one.
Yes, that doesn't need committing to public record for sure.
But now that people know you, we'll tag you on Twitter, on X when we post this episode. But aside from there, where can people find you? Is there other stuff that you've written or published that you want people to know about you, or do you want to remain a mystery? That's totally cool too. Josh, I'll start with you. Anything that you want people to know about you, that they can find you online?
I'm on Twitter, like you said, or X as it's called now. But other than that, no. No, not really. No, I feel like I've become Mr. Nobody now, Mr. Mysterious. I don't think there's anything else I need to plug.
I am also on Twitter. and delighted to talk to anyone about Fast and Furious. And we'll look forward to continuing to follow you guys on Twitter as well.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. Fraser?
I feel like as the weaker hand, I need to kind of maintain some elusiveness to maybe become the stronger hand. So no, there's nothing else from me other than also on Twitter and things like that. Otherwise, I'll just be riding off into the Tokyo sunset, hopefully.
Love it.
In one
Beautiful.
piece.
Beautiful.
Can I just quickly plug something both of them are doing? So Fraser, and I know that I was listening to your guys' podcast, and I know one of the laps you did, you looked at the Shaw Brothers, and you also looked at the Shaw Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And so Fraser is just about to put publishing a book that's about Hong Kong cinema.
Ooh.
There's also a number of really great articles that Josh has written kind of about some of the themes that we were talking about around like celebrity culture. But do you have anything in the pipeline specifically?
Angelina Jolie needs to pick up on that and carry that forward.
If those are, I don't know if those are available like publicly or if they're like this where they're sort of hard. But if you have links to those, if you want to send those links, we can put links in the description for this episode. We can just get those out there. Or, if they're collected somewhere that you need to buy, I'll send links to that and we'll just get that out there. Joe, our next episode is The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, the original, not the remake from 1974. That'll be out next week. Very excited about that because that has come up in the last handful of episodes, and I'm very excited to talk about that.
Yeah.
I also want to give a shout out to our patrons, Cassie Wilson, Nick Burris, Alex Ellen, and Justin Kleiman, Brian Rodriguez of High School Slumber Party, Wes Hampton, Jerry Robinson, Dan the Duke, Hayden Renato, Di Donato, Michael McGann, Lane Middleton, Lindsay Lewandowski, Nate Milton of the Kings of Sports, Jason Rainey, Tom Price, Mike Gallagher, Josh Buckley of Whole Lot of Wolves, Michael Moser, Christian Larson, Tara Newone, Aaron Willows, and Natalie Absolute, Randy Carter, and Jessica Collins, a.k.a. Montez. Thank you all for supporting us at the $5 a month level or above. We will see you next time for Fate of the Furious. And for all things Too Fast, Too Forever, go to cageclub.me, facebook.com/TooFastTooForever, or at TooFastTooForever on just about every site. Email us, family@cageclub.me. Check out our Patreon page at TooFastTooForever.com and our store at cageclub.me/shop. And come back next week for The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. I'm Joey Lewandowski.
I'm Joe too.
And that was Josh Gulam, Fraser Elliott, and Sarah Feinstein, and we will tell you all about it
when we see you again.